So by the age of 29, I was a father of 7. In fact, I became a father roughly 18 years old. And let me explain. Now, I'm going to throw it right out the gate. I didn't father all these kids. So I have a combination of stepchildren, biological child, and adopted children. So I met my wife when I was 18. I was working at Pepsi, and basically her friend was dating my roommate. And one night they were going to go bowling. I'll get into the whole story maybe in another video, but essentially they were going bowling. They stopped by the apartment. She was with them, and I wasn't really doing anything. So they asked if I wanted to go bowling. Initially, I didn't want to go, but they kind of like urged me to go with them. So I did. Me and her ended up hitting it off and dating, eventually moving in together, and getting together. And my wife, well, girlfriend at the time, she had 3 kids from her previous marriage. So my wife is about 4.5 years older than me, and she had her youngest daughter, young, like 15. So my wife already had the 3 kids when I met her. Now, I'll be honest, when I had moved out of my house, I said that I was not going to be with someone who had kids. So for the first person for me to, seriously kind of get into a relationship with, to have kids, was against what I said. Now, there's a whole video I could make about the expectations that we have as humans versus what God knows what's best for us, because both me and my wife had expectations before meeting each other, that we were saying we did not want this in our relationship, and yet God inverted that and put us together against the very things that we said we didn't want, and we ended up making it, right? My wife and I have been married for over 17 years, or almost 17 years, sorry. So yeah, anyway, so I met my wife. She had 3 kids, and initially I was not going to stay with her because of it. I'll be honest. I struggled with it for a while, and there was one guy, if there was one person that kind of saved my relationship or kind of helped me along, it's this guy named Felipe that I used to work with at Pepsi. And he was like, well, do you like her? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, then why are you letting that stop you? Like, if you like her and, you want to see where it goes, then just do it. Stop overthinking it. And he didn't mean it in a mean way. And I'm not suggesting this for every person, but he was right. Like, I liked her and I wanted to be with her, but the kids, I was like, oh, I'm not ready for all that and all that. But, my wife, girlfriend at the time, even told me up front, like, I'm not looking for a father for my kids. I just want somebody because I don't want to be alone. She wanted someone who wanted to be with her, not take care of her kids. So anyway, my wife and I, we ended up getting together. We dated and lived together for about 2 years, and then we got married. And right after that, after we got married back in 2008, so I think I said 2008, but I meant 2006. We met in 2006. Well, 2008, we got married and we wanted to have a kid. So, we were obviously married. I was with her and I was kind of learning to be a father to these kids. And I'm just going to say up front that I respect any step parent that will willingly take on other people's kids and raise them up, because it is not easy. Now, it's even more difficult later on in the story, but I respect step parents who are willing to fulfill that role. Listen, I am a product of step parents. My dad left my mom because they had irreconcilable differences, and my stepdad stepped in and he raised me. And we did not see eye to eye. I did not like him for a long time, but I do respect him for making that sacrifice of raising me, a child that was not his. So I don't know that he did it the best, but he did it the best way that he could, or that he knew how to do. And there are a lot of good things that I took away from my stepdad that now we have a good relationship, but at the time we didn't, but I can see that now. Anyway, moving on. So we wanted to try to have a child. Well, in 2009, my wife and I got really sick, And my wife just wasn't really recovering correctly, like very fast, but also she was just taking in a lot of fluids and like using the bathroom a lot. And we found out that she had diabetes, type 1 diabetes, like completely insulin dependent. And it came from the sickness attacking her body and shutting her pancreas down completely. And because of this, we were still trying to have a child, but the thing with that is that if your sugar is not regulated, it actually can kill off, pretty much any chances of having a child. It affects getting pregnant. And so my wife, not knowing she had diabetes for a while, like we were trying and it just wasn't happening. She went to a doctor, found out she had diabetes, had to get it, basically under control. And we had to wait until her blood sugars were under control. It took months and months and months. So we couldn't even try for that whole time. So that was all 2009. And then in 2010, essentially, after months, she was able to get it under control and we were able to try again and we got pregnant. So in 2011, we had my son, Ben, and Ben had some complications. He is autistic. He also, the pregnancy with my wife's, diabetes was very, very difficult. We were at the doctor 3 times a week, every week. And my wife was on bed rest for like 4 months straight because she was, dilating so fast. So there was a lot of complications with that pregnancy, but Ben was born. He was born overall healthy. And he, and that's it. He's still, doing well now. He is, like I said, he is autistic, but, he's doing well for the most part, and I love him. And so that was, child number 4. And so, I thought that we were done after that. In fact, we both kind of thought that we were done. We didn't have any intentions of having any more kids because, one, if he was autistic, it's not that we're against that. We love him to death, but in having to deal with that on top of our other 3 kids, it was a challenge, I'll be honest. But also because of how difficult the pregnancy was on my wife, we just didn't want to go through that again with her because that wasn't fair to her. And it was her 4th pregnancy. So, she had already gone through 4. So I didn't want to try to force her to try to have any more kids if her body was already having to deal with all of that. So we kind of decided that we were done. I was good with 1 of my own and, we had the other 3. And so we thought we were done. Well, about 9 years ago, in 2015, our family of 6, we moved into a new house. And so that was in 2015. We moved into our house. And right after we moved into our house, we started talking to extended family. So there was family on my wife's side that the parents had been on drugs. Basically, it's her step brother, I believe, and his girlfriend. They had 3 girls, and they were on drugs. And so it's like they would get clean, they'd get the kids back, and then they would go back on them, lose the kids. The kids would end up living with the great-grandmother or whatever. So for a while, the parents were with the kids. Basically, at the end of 2014 and going into 2015, they were living with, family on my wife's side. And our kids would go over and they would see these other kids and they kind of made a bond with the parents and with the kids. I never really saw them. I only saw them a couple of times, but our kids would go over because of school or because one of the kids' school was by that side of the family. So they would end up going over there. They'd see them and they kind of made a bond with them. And so in 2015, we actually reached out to the parents because we're like, hey, we're moving. If you want any of our furniture or whatever, let us know. Well, we never heard anything back. And we were like, okay, well, I guess they just didn't need it. So we end up moving. And right after that, we find out that the parents were back on drugs. And so, we didn't really think much of it because it was kind of outside of our wheelhouse, right? It was like extended family. So we're like, well, that's kind of, that sucks. It's really sad, but, we didn't really think much of it. Well, a little while later, we find out that they were living with a great grandmother and she's older. And so we were like, well, I feel really bad that the kids are having to grow up without their parents and, in this difficult situation, maybe we can help her out. And so initially my wife and I just reached out to the grandmother and said, hey, we want to help you with the girls. Maybe we'll take them on the weekends so that you have, a day or two to yourself, and you can kind of recoup trying to, watch all these kids. Cause, that's not hard, or that's not easy for someone who's older. I mean, it's not even easy for us as, maybe middle-aged or younger parents, but even for an older person. And this is no shade to her on her age. I'm just trying to illustrate a point. And so anyway, we reach out. We're like, hey, let's help out. We can take the girls for a couple days at a time so that you can get some time to yourself. And she was all for it. So we started taking the girls in, and it's 3 girls, and they were young. Like the oldest was 8, the youngest was 2, I believe. And so it was like 2, 3, and 8. We take the girls, and we start helping out, just having them come over for a couple days at a time. Well, as we took them in more and more, we kind of got the sense that they needed parents. They needed structure. We started to kind of get this heart for them. And I remember I was working, and one day my wife just she calls me or texts me or something. She's like, hey, we need to talk, when you get home, whatever. Or maybe I was still at work and she called me, but she's like, look, I want to take the girls in if she's willing to do that, the grandmother. And I was like, okay. And my wife was surprised because she expected me to kind of go back and forth with her or to disagree or not want to do it. But I was like, yeah, I mean, they need parents, and, we've already raised 4 kids, maybe not all the way to adult, but, we have raised kids for years, obviously. So, we could take them in, we have experience, and we have, structure. We have, a loving family. And like I said, we're perfect by any stretch. We definitely have our flaws and everything else, but we care. And so we take these, we told the grandmother, and she's like, yeah, I think that's a good idea. And so over the next year, we went through the fostering process through the state, and they kind of put us on a fast track because it wasn't quite kinship because we weren't blood related, but it was a faster track than normal because we were related, and the parents' rights were getting severed anyway. And so over the next year, we went through the entire process of dealing with the state, of fostering, of taking them in and having them come in and check our house multiple times. And, we went through the adoption process. And in November of 2016, we adopted them. And so ever since then, obviously we have had these 3 girls. Now, I'm going to be honest, raising 3 kids that are not even yours is definitely more challenging than I expected, because adopting kids that you don't even know very well comes with a lot of challenges and baggage and, history and stuff that you don't know. There's a lot of things that we had no answers for, even from the parents or from, extended family, or, there's a lot of things that we don't know what happened in their past. And you don't see the manifestation of that right away, right? So they had some attitude issues and they had some issues, and love them to death. But we had to, obviously undo a lot of bad habits and a lot of just really mental baggage we've had to unpack over the years. And like I said in the thumbnail, I was 29 when we took these girls in, and I thought that I knew what it took to raise children at this point, because we had already raised our 4 kids. Again, different years, but you've raised 4 kids of boy and girls and seen it all, and still I was not prepared for these kids. But anyway, I love them. And the point of all of this is that it is not easy to take in kids that are not yours. I basically am just sharing this piece, I guess, because I didn't want kids that weren't mine. I said that all those years ago, right? When I was 17, 18, whatever, right before, not long before I met my wife, that I didn't want kids. And I especially didn't want someone else's kids. Here I am, all these years later, about, 20 years later or so, maybe, about 20 years. And I now have six kids that are not my blood children. And I love them all. I love them all in different ways. And I love them, I've had to learn to love them, but I do love them. And it's possible. It's if you are a person who are, maybe you're considering taking on stepchildren, or maybe you're considering fostering or adopting, it is possible to learn to love kids. Now, I'm not saying it's easy by any stretch of the imagination. There are times where I honestly questioned if I did the right thing, but I know that the alternative to me not doing it would have been more brokenness. And when I think of that, it helps. It helps to kind of refocus all of this. But anyways, that's my story. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments if you made it this far. And I would love to answer it. Maybe I'll do more videos about raising stepkids or raising foster parents or foster kids or whatever. Because if I can share something that resonates with someone else, then I want to do that. So anyway, that's about it. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. God bless. Bye.